So I recently came across this podcast from Perplexity AI. And for those of you who don't know, Perplexity AI is an AI search engine. Think sort of Google plus ChatGPT in one tool. Anyways, I came across their podcast and they have this daily AI podcast where they cover the latest news in tech, science, and all that sort of stuff. And after listening to it, I had a suspicion that it was AI generated. I didn't even know for sure because it's pretty high quality. And then I went to their site and it turns out they are using 11 Labs as the voice. So 11 Labs is a text-to-speech provider. You can sort of type in the text that you want and it'll turn it into voice. They have lots of different languages and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty easy to use. I think a lot of creators are using it right now just for voiceovers, that sort of stuff. Anyways, after I sort of figured this out, the first thing I thought was, how do you automate this, right? Because something like a daily news blog post or daily news newsletter is pretty easy to automate. If you've watched my previous videos, you've seen how I've automated those things. Like you can scrape Reddit, you can scrape different newsletters, use ChatGPT to combine those different data sources into a daily update. So you could do something like that for this as well. And then you add on this text to voice component and all of a sudden you're generating sort of new podcasts on a daily basis. And that's a huge sort of benefit or huge time saver if you already have a podcast for your business or you want to add one or you just want to sell this as a service to your customers. Now, Perplexity.ai, I don't know if they're using a no-code tool or anything like that. I suspect they've just coded a quick script on the back end because they have some background music at the initial sort of few minutes in the podcast, which is quite hard to do in a tool like make.com, which is purely no-code. But you can get pretty far in make.com, which is what we're going to try to do today. So as I mentioned, we're going to be using make.com as our workflow automation tool. So this will help us join together the different software pieces that we'll be using. And the second big piece we'll be using is OpenAI. So I know Perplexity uses 11 Labs for their text-to-speech component, but we'll be using just OpenAI's text-to-speech model. And we're just doing that just to keep it simple because we're going to be using GPT-4o anyways to generate the podcast content. So we're just going to keep it all within one provider to keep the build relatively simple. If you sort of want to expand, you can use 11 Labs. There's other providers like DeepGram as well, lots of different model providers on the market. So you can test those out as you want. The logic in the build will be largely the same regardless of what model provider you go with. In this video, I'm probably not going to spend too much time on how to find your data sources and combine them because I've covered that so many times in my previous videos. So in this video, I'll probably just generate a example podcast and then we'll just use that example podcast and go through the latest steps around how you actually turn that into a voice audio recording and then how do you save that, right? And unfortunately, we won't be able to add the background music as you can sort of see in Perplexity, but I'll sort of give you a few directional cues as to where you could look. And for the most part, you will need some sort of custom code to add background audio to the generated voice recordings. Anyways, let's not get bogged down in those details. Let's get started and we can cover those as we get to them. So as I mentioned, if you want to know about how you can scrape Reddit, newsletters, all that sort of stuff to come up with a daily summary, just check out my previous videos. I've made multiple videos on that topic. So for this one, I'm just going to generate an example podcast that will be turning into a voice recording. So what I'm going to do here is just use the generic OpenAI completion, and I'm just going to use GPT-4o, and I'm just going to give it a very simple prompt, right? So generate a script for an AI podcast. No need to diarize or identify speakers. Then we're just going to say impact of AI on, right? Something very quite generic, to be honest, but we just want to generate an example script for us to turn into a podcast. So I'm going to run this module and GPT-4 will take my prompt and hopefully generate a decent script. And usually you'd be able to automate all of this, right? So you might have your make.com automation run on a daily basis, and every day it will pull in the top stories from Reddit, the newsletters that you've subscribed to, all that sort of stuff, and feed it into GPT-4o to turn into a script. But in this video, we're just going to generate it from scratch. So it's not going to be great, but it'll be enough for us to demonstrate how you do the podcast creation side of things. So you're doing the end-to-end build, you're going to have to sort of mix and match a couple of different pieces that we've covered in previous videos. Cool. So we've got this transcript, not too bad, not amazing, but good enough for our tutorial. So what you need to do next is actually quite simple. So you just drag in this generate an audio module here. So I'm not going to link it. I'm just going to switch this across. I'm going to keep that one on the side. We're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to use that transcript. And what you're going to do is click into here. If you haven't set up your OpenAI connection yet at make.com, just click through this link and follow the instructions. You will need to go to platform.openai.com and generate an API key. Anyways, once you've done that, you can paste in your content. So I'm going to come over here and paste in what we generated. So I'm just going to paste in the first paragraph here. So I'm just going to put in that input. So that's what we're going to turn into voice. And I'm just going to use TTS1. So that's text to speech 1. And you can probably choose the voice and all that sort of stuff if you wanted to, but let's just keep it simple for now. We're just going to use Alloy, and then let's press OK. And that will generate. The problem is if you're using this module in make.com, you won't be able to listen to the generated audio because you just get the, I believe it's the binary, I can't remember exactly, although it's just the buffer file afterwards. So what you need to do is actually save the generated file to some sort of file system. So I use Google Drive. If you save to Google Drive, you can then listen to it in Google Drive. So what I'm going to do is just drag in Google Drive, and I'm going to use the upload a file module. So I've already connected my Google Drive, so you'll need to do that. And then you can select from the list. I'm just going to use I have an audio notes folder, which I just dumped a lot of random things into. And I'm just feeding in the file that was just generated in this previous module. So I'll press OK. And then if I run this, do I leave something blank? Looking okay. Must have just not saved. Anyways, so now it will generate audio for that first minute. So you can see here the output is just this, which you can't really listen to, but I've now saved it into my Google Drive. So if I come here, you can see that I have just generated this one. And if I click into it, I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear this.
Welcome to AI Insights, the podcast where we delve into the evolving world of artificial intelligence and its transformative impact on our lives and society. Today, we're exploring a topic that affects all of us, the impact of AI on work.
So you can see it's pretty good, right? If you're not listening super carefully, it could be sort of passing as a human voice. Now, the downside of this is, as I mentioned before, is if you listen to most podcasts, they have like intro music, they have some background music, that sort of stuff. To do that in make.com is actually quite hard because there's no real built-in MP3 manipulation, and I couldn't find any modules that do it. So if you wanted to add background music or just intro music, you probably will need to write a custom script, which maybe takes your Google Drive files here and then adds in that intro music, or you just have a HTTP request to your own endpoint here to do that. But even without that, this is already quite a big improvement. Potentially, if you want to do it, keep it completely no code, and you're happy to just hire someone off Upwork, what you can do is just have this run daily, right? Generate the voice recording into a folder in Google Drive, share that voice recording with your assistant or your employee, and then just say every day there will be a new file in this folder. Can you just please sort of add the intro and then just give it a quick edit, that sort of stuff, and then upload it to your podcast distribution choice, right? You can upload it to wherever you want. I know there's so many podcast distribution networks these days. And I guess the only other thing to do is if you're doing that, let's have a quick look here. You can change the file name. So you might change it. If you're doing it on a daily basis, you might want to do, format date. And we're going to do today's date, which is timestamp. And then we're going to format it in, let's do it in a nice format. Let's say this format. Oh, let's do it right then. Yeah. Date. AI podcast. Something like that, right? Cool. That should not go in there. It should be something like this. Let's hope I did that correctly. It's always a bit finicky, but anyways, so let's do that. Let's try generate one more time just to make sure that looks okay. You can sort of get AI to generate a title for your podcast as well, right? Right now, I'm just keeping it super simple, just generating the contents of the podcast, but you can give it a name as well. I wouldn't be surprised if all of these podcast episode titles are also AI generated, so you can do that as well. Anyway, so this is, well, that is not the right date. Let me see, I must have gotten something wrong. Format dates, what did I do wrong here? Oh, press the wrong one. So it should be now. Let me generate that one more time, and it should be today's date. And there we go, today's date with the podcast, and it should be working.
Welcome to AI Insights, podcast where we delve.
Like, to be honest, if you were just wanting to do a super basic podcast and you don't need the audio editing, that's probably good enough to go. But yeah, it wouldn't be too expensive to just hire someone to add in those extra touches that you wanted. Otherwise, if you also wanted to and you had that capability in-house, or you wanted to hire someone, you could get a custom script to add the background music and the intro music as well. But yeah, that's sort of it for this video. This is sort of just one section in a broader build. Like I mentioned before, you do need some sort of content at the beginning in order to generate a valuable podcast. If you're not sure how you can go about that, watch my previous videos on how to generate content. I go through lots of different ways for how you can pull in data from different sources and combine them, that sort of stuff. So you have that before these two steps, and then after these two steps, you might have distribution steps. So publishing to the podcast distribution network, publishing social posts, all that sort of stuff, just to push your podcast as well. So this is just one step in a broader workflow, but I hope this is valuable. If you have any thoughts, questions, or feedback, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try my best to get back to you. And if you do need help with AI automations or just automating your business to help you scale more profitably, please do reach out. I do offer AI and automation consulting and would love to help you out. With that, I'll see you in my next video, and I hope you learned something today.